You know that feeling when you look at something huge like climate change and it just feels overwhelming. Like, how do you even start to tackle it?
Yeah, it's a common feeling. So much complexity.
Exactly. But what if there was, like, a proper legal plan? Something designed to actually cut through that complexity, show a clear way forward, and crucially, make specific companies and groups accountable.
Well, that's exactly what we're diving into today.
Welcome to the deep dive. We take the sources you need to know about and pull out the key insights to get you up to speed. Fast.
Yep, making complex stuff understandable.
So, our mission today, we're unpacking South Africa's really significant Climate Change Act 22 of 2024. We want to explain this whole thing, its purpose, the key rules inside it, the legal world it fits into, what it actually means for businesses and people on the ground, and, why it matters.
Whether you're just curious, maybe studying law, or need to understand this for work, you should leave with a solid grasp of this legislation.
Okay, let's dive in. To really get this act, we need to start with the why, right? The sources point straight to these opening statements, the whereas bits.
The foundations.
And it says this act isn't just pulled out of thin air. It's rooted right in the South African Constitution, the right everyone has to an environment that doesn't harm their health. And importantly, protecting it for future generations too.
That's a really powerful start. It frames climate change not just as an environmental issue, but as a fundamental rights issue. It gives it serious weight.
And the preamble, the intro part, it doesn't mince words. It calls out human-caused climate change, anthropogenic, that's the term, as an urgent threat.
Absolutely. And it explicitly connects South Africa's actions to the global picture. It mentions international agreements like the Paris Agreement and the country's own targets, its nationally determined contribution, or NDC.
Plus, it brings in this idea of a just transition right from the start. We'll definitely come back to that.
We will. It's central.
So the Act has clear goals, its objects. What are they aiming for?
Well, first, a coordinated nationwide response. No more scattered efforts, hopefully.
Yeah.
Second, managing the impacts. We can't avoid boosting resilience, adapting effectively.
Okay, coordination, adaptation. What else?
Making a fair contribution globally to reducing emissions. And as you said, ensuring that just transition to a low-carbon economy, one that considers South Africa's specific situation.
And the big one, protecting the planet for everyone.
That's the ultimate goal woven through it all. And that just transition idea, it's not just a bullet point. It's baked into the guiding principles.
How so? What does that mean in practice?
It means the shift has to be fair. It needs to actively create decent jobs, include everyone, and help get rid of poverty. It's about managing the social side of going green, not just the environmental or technical side.
That sounds ambitious
Yeah.
and crucial. What other principles shape how this whole act should be read and used?
There's the idea of common but differentiated responsibilities, basically acknowledging that different countries have different roles and histories in causing climate change.
Right, fair enough.
Then there's integrated management. This means climate thinking has to be part of all decision-making, not just tacked on later.
And what about the people who are most affected by climate change?
Big focus there. The Act demands special consideration for vulnerable places and people. It lists examples: poor and rural women, kids, the elderly, people with disabilities. Those often hit hardest.
Good that it's explicit.
Definitely. It also pushes for a risk-averse and cautious approach using the best science we have. And it enshrines the polluter pays principle. If you cause the damage, you should bear the cost.
Makes sense.
And finally, a strong emphasis on public awareness and participation, getting everyone involved.
Okay, that gives us the spirit of the act. But let's get into the language. There are some key terms we need to nail down, like adaptation versus mitigation. What's the difference?
Okay, think of it this way. Mitigation is about tackling the cause. It's reducing greenhouse gas emissions, like using cleaner energy or sucking them out of the air, maybe by planting trees.
Right, stopping the problem getting worse.
Exactly. Adaptation is about dealing with the effects that are already happening or locked in.
Yeah.
It's adjusting how we live and work to cope with climate impacts, maybe building flood defenses or developing crops that handle drought better.
Got it. Cause and effect, both needed.
Both essential, yeah. You can't just do one.
And we keep mentioning just transition. Can you quickly remind us of the Act's definition?
Sure. The Act defines it as moving to a low-carbon, climate-resilient economy and society in a way that actually helps create good jobs, includes everyone socially, and fights poverty. It's about fairness during the shift.
Okay. And two more that seem really important for businesses: carbon budget and CO2e.
Right. A carbon budget is basically an allowance, a cap. It's a specific amount of greenhouse gases that a particular company or entity is allowed to emit directly over a set time period. You can't go over it legally.
Like a pollution allowance.
Pretty much. And CO2, or carbon dioxide equivalent. That's just a standard unit. Different greenhouse gases trap heat differently, right? CO2 lets us talk about them all using one number based on their warming impact compared to carbon dioxide. Makes tracking easier.
Okay, that helps. Now, where does this big new act sit in the legal landscape? Does it replace older laws?
Good question. No, it doesn't replace everything. It has to be read alongside the main environmental law, the National Environmental Management Act, or NEMA. It's considered a specific type of act under NEMA's umbrella.
So it fits into the existing system.
It does. But, and this is important, if there's ever a conflict between this Climate Change Act and another law specifically about climate change, this act wins. It has supremacy in its specific area.
That gives it real authority then.
Definitely clarifies things.
And who does it apply to? Just the national government?
Nope, everyone. The act binds the whole country, all its land, its waters, even its islands. And significantly, it binds all organs of state, meaning every single government department, every province, every municipality, national, provincial, local, they all have to follow this act. It's a top-to-bottom, whole-of-government thing.
Wow. Okay. That leads us to how it's all supposed to work, the structure, the governance. You mentioned all organs of state need to align their policies, but who's driving this? The sources highlight the Presidential Climate Commission, the PCC.
Yeah, the PCC is positioned as a major player who's already around, but this act locks it in as an independent, impartial public entity. That independence is vital for giving unbiased advice.
And who's on it? Is it just government officials?
Not at all. That's one of its strengths.
Yeah.
It's designed to have up to 25 members, representing a really wide mix. Government, yes, but also organized labor, civil society groups, traditional leaders, local government associations, and importantly, business.
So lots of different voices.
Exactly. The aim is to get broad input and perspective right at the advisory level.
And the president chairs it. That seems like a big deal. What does that signal?
It signals very high-level political backing. Having the president directly involved gives the PCC's work significant weight and visibility. Its job is to advise the government on the whole climate response, mitigation, adaptation, and, importantly, those socioeconomic aspects of the just transition.
Is their advice public?
Yes, the Act requires their reports and recommendations to go to the National Assembly and be published online. So there's transparency built in.
Okay, so that's the national advisory body. How does this filter down to provinces and municipalities, where the impacts are really felt?
That's where the existing government structures get repurposed. Those intergovernmental forums that already exist at provincial and district levels. They now also function as provincial and municipal forums on climate change.
Ah, okay, so using what's already there.
Precisely. Their job is to coordinate climate actions within their specific areas and then report upwards.
Yeah.
It creates this link from national strategy down to local implementation. It's meant to be a multi-level coordinated system.
Seems logical.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's get into the core strategies now. Adaptation and mitigation. Two sides of the climate coin. Starting with adaptation, dealing with the impacts. What's the plan?
The Minister for Environment has to set national adaptation goals and ways to measure progress. It's about guiding the country's response. This involves developing adaptation scenarios, basically, looking ahead at likely impacts and vulnerabilities based on the best available science. Think climate models, early warning systems.
So trying to anticipate what's coming.
Exactly. Be proactive. This feeds into a national adaptation strategy and plan, a big coherent plan to reduce vulnerability, build resilience, enhance our ability to cope. It also has to include disaster risk planning.
Makes sense. But how does that national plan translate to, say, farming or healthcare?
That's the really practical part.
Yeah.
The Act has a list, Schedule 2, of government functions, things like agriculture, education, energy, health, housing. The minister responsible for each of those areas must assess how climate change affects their work and then develop a specific sector adaptation strategy and plan.
Ah, so each key department has its own adaptation homework to do.
Pretty much. It forces adaptation thinking into the core business of government, sector by sector. Very practical.
Okay, that's adapting to impacts. Now the other side, mitigation, cutting emissions. This is where it gets serious for industry, right?
Absolutely. This is where things like the national greenhouse gas emissions trajectory come in. The minister, after consulting cabinet, sets this overall target for the country's total emissions over time.
A national carbon diet plan, basically.
Sort of, yeah.
Hmm.
And until they publish a specific one, the country's current international pledge, the NDC, acts as the trajectory. It gets reviewed every 5 years so it can be updated.
How does that national target get broken down?
Through sectoral emissions targets. The minister identifies the major emitting sectors. The Act lists examples like agriculture, energy, transport, manufacturing, mining, and Schedule 1. Then, working with the ministers responsible for those sectors, specific targets are set.
Targets for each big emitting industry.
Yes, and these targets have to line up with the overall national trajectory. They're also reviewed every 5 years.
Okay, targets are one thing. But you mentioned carbon budgets. That sounds more like a hard limit. Tell us about those.
This is arguably one of the most significant parts of the Act for Business. The minister must allocate a carbon budget to any entity carrying out a specific, listed high-emitting activity.
Must allocate, so it's not optional for these companies.
Correct. If you run an activity on that list, you get a budget. And this budget is for your direct emissions, the ones you control directly. Typically, these budgets are set for 3 5-year periods in a row.
3 5-year periods, that's 15 years. That provides some certainty, I guess.
That's the idea. It gives industry a longer planning horizon. If you get a budget, you then have to create and implement a greenhouse gas mitigation plan showing how you'll stay within that budget. And you have to monitor and report on your progress every year.
So it's budget, plan, monitor, report. A clear cycle.
A very clear, legally mandated cycle with real consequences if you fail. This directly impacts how major industries will need to operate and invest.
Are there other specific gases targeted?
Yes, the Act allows the minister to identify synthetic greenhouse gases, often very potent ones, used in specific applications, and then order their phase down or phase out over time with clear plans and deadlines.
Okay. And how do they track all this?
Through the National Greenhouse Gas Inventory. This sets up a system for collecting emissions data systematically across the country each year. It lets them see the trends, check if they're meeting the national trajectory, and compare against international promises. Data is crucial for managing this.
Okay, so we have the frameworks, the targets, the budgets. How does the government actually make all this happen day to day, and how do they enforce it? What are the teeth?
Well, the minister gets broad powers to make detailed regulations. This is key. These regulations will spell out the specifics for things like setting those carbon budgets, reviewing them, ensuring compliance, and enforcing them. Also, rules for the mitigation plans.
So the Act sets the what, and the regulations will set the how.
Exactly. The regulations will also cover things like incentives or disincentives, carrots and sticks to encourage greener behavior, rules for monitoring progress, phasing out those synthetic gases, and the details of data collection for the inventory.
Is this all decided behind closed doors? What about input from the public or businesses?
No, the Act really emphasizes consultation and public participation. Before making major decisions or regulations, the minister usually has to consult with other relevant ministers, provincial leaders, MECs, and government bodies. And for many things, there's a requirement for public input publishing notices, inviting people and organizations to submit comments, sometimes even holding public hearings.
So avenues for feedback are built in.
They are. It aims for a more cooperative and transparent approach.
Okay, but what if someone just ignores their carbon budget or doesn't submit their plan? What are the actual consequences, the teeth you mentioned?
The teeth are definitely there. The Act creates specific offenses. Things like failing to provide required emissions data, giving false info, not preparing or submitting your mitigation plan if you have a carbon budget, or ignoring a phase-out order for synthetic gases.
And the penalties?
They're significant. For a first offense, you could face a fine up to R$5 million or up to 5 years in prison.
Wow.
And if you're convicted again, it doubles. Up to R$10 million fine or up to 10 years in prison or potentially both.
Okay, that's serious money and time. That sends a pretty clear message.
It absolutely does. It shows this is intended as a binding law with real enforcement power, not just suggested guidelines.
This really does feel like a landmark piece of legislation for South Africa. Summing it up, what's the big picture significance here?
The biggest thing is that it shifts South Africa's climate response from just policy papers and voluntary targets into a solid, binding legal framework. It puts legal duties on government at all levels and makes specific emitters accountable through things like carbon budgets.
And that just transition theme seems critical throughout.
Absolutely critical. It's woven into the fabric of the Act. It's saying, yes, we need to decarbonize, but we must do it fairly. Considering the impacts on workers, on communities, creating new opportunities, tackling poverty. It elevates social equity alongside environmental goals.
That integration seems quite unique.
It's certainly a strong focus. While other countries talk about it, embedding this explicitly in the core legal framework is quite forward-thinking, especially for a developing nation balancing so many priorities. It could set a real example.
So thinking about the impact, who does this affect most?
Well, government departments have clear new legal duties. Industry, especially big emitters, faces those carbon budgets and mitigation planning requirements, a major shift.
A challenge, but maybe an opportunity for innovation, too.
Potentially, yes,
Mhm.
and for citizens. It strengthens their constitutional environmental rights, gives them channels for participation, and holds out the promise of the benefits of climate action, cleaner air, maybe new green jobs, a more resilient society.
It seems like a really comprehensive attempt to grapple with climate change legally.
It is. Its scope, its embedding of the just transition, its enforcement mechanisms, it's a significant piece of law, potentially setting a precedent.
So there we have it, a deep dive into South Africa's Climate Change Act 22 of 2024. It's clearly a huge step, putting a legal backbone into the country's climate ambitions, a complex plan trying to balance the environment, the economy, and social fairness.
It definitely lays out a strong commitment on paper. But, as always with laws like this, the real test is in the implementation. That's where the rubber hits the road.
Which leaves us with something to think about. This act sets up rules and consequences. But how can a legal framework like this go beyond just forcing compliance? How does it actually spark the innovation, the collaboration needed between government, business, and communities to achieve these massive goals?
Right. And what unexpected challenges or maybe unexpected opportunities pop up when you try to weave something this ambitious into every part of a country's economy and life? It's a huge national undertaking, and its success will really depend on everyone staying engaged.